Good evening. The May 18th, 2022 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission will come to order. The Planning and Zoning Commission is an independent advisory body of the City of Ames City Council. The Planning and Zoning Commission members are volunteers of the community and not part of the city administration. The Planning and Zoning Commission is supported by staff from the city's planning division. The commission is responsible for recommendations on matters involving subdivisions, annexations, master plans, and major site development plans, amendments to the zoning ordinance, and comprehensive plan amendments. We make our recommendations based on city codes, the facts presented, and input from the public. As an advisory commission, we welcome all comments regarding the proposed item that you wish to speak about. Please direct your input to the commission. If the proceedings become lengthy, we may ask that comments be focused on new information not previously presented. You may speak only once on an agenda item. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker identification card and present it to the recording secretary. We ask that you come to the microphone and speak so that all comments may be recorded. The order of the proceeding for each item on the agenda will be as follows. City staff will present the staff report regarding the agenda item. Commission members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the city staff. The applicant will be invited to make a statement regarding the request. Commission members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant. Members of the audience will be invited to come forward to offer comments and questions. Once public comment is closed, city staff and the applicant will have an opportunity for concluding remarks. The commission will discuss the application based on all presentations and any comments given and come to a recommendation for city council. The discussion may include further discussion or further questions of city staff and the applicant for clarification. With that, we'll move on to the first agenda item, which is the introduction of commission members.
Start on this side. Julie Winter.
Mike Sullivan.
Mike Clayton.
John Emery.
Kiana Top.
And rounding out the mics, Mike LaPetra.
Okay, yeah, before you the agenda for tonight's meeting, do I hear any motion to approve it?
Motion to approve.
Go ahead.
Second.
There's a motion to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of May 4th, 2022. You should have had a chance to read them.
I move the approval of the minutes of May 4th,
I second.
2022.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the public forum. The public forum is intended to allow anybody to come up and speak on an item that's not on the agenda. Does anybody have anything they would like to speak to tonight that's not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next one. Item 6 is public hearing for the rezoning with master plan for 798 500th Avenue, the property north of the Sunset Ridge subdivision.
Thank you. I'm Justin Moore. I'm the case planner, one of the planners in the planning department. What you've got before you is an application for rezoning tonight from Hunziker Development Group. They own the 28.58 acres of land that you see there on the screen in green. And they are applying to rezone that property from the agricultural designation that it currently is and has been since it was annexed earlier this year to FSRL, which is a single-family low-density residential designation in our zoning ordinance. Just a quick overview of the property. It was annexed, as I said, earlier this year. The property is immediately north, abutting the existing Sunset Ridge subdivision down here, as you can see. And next map here is the proposed zoning that they are applying to go to. So the proposed rezoning does require and has had a master plan submitted with it. And as we stated in the report, master plans are required in this instance when the FS designated zone is applied for in our zoning ordinance. So the master plan will guide the kind of the general layout, the density, and those sorts of things. It is not as detailed as a preliminary plat or a final plat, but it does show open space and proposed stormwater detention areas, things like that. The property, as I said, 28.58 acres, 13.27 acres is proposed for the development of single-family homes. As you can see there in the what would be like an orange color. The open space comprises 11.3 acres in the green, and that will be again devoted to open space and stormwater treatment and detention as it develops. The open space requirement is exceeded. The minimum requirement is 10% in FS zoned areas. The developer proposes to construct anywhere in a range between 55 and 65 new single-family homes in the 13.27 acres that's identified for single-family home development. As part of Ames Plan 2040, the city did evaluate infrastructure needs, and you can see here on the master plan, one of the things that is going to be required with the development of this proposed future subdivision will be the installation of a sanitary sewer trunk main. And that's shown generally here where the mouse is going, this dashed black line east to west through the site. That is required to provide for the future expansion of the city to the north and west further in the future. So this phase of development is triggering that. And so we are currently in negotiations and speaking with the developer about costs and timing and those sorts of things, so that we can have an agreement nailed down by the time we go to City Council for final approval. The basic layout, too, as you can see, there's two streets that come in to the development from the south. These two connection points here. One of them is Elston Avenue, which is right over here. The other one is Wilder Avenue right here. There are also two future connection points to the north in the future. That property, as we stated, is undetermined ultimately how it will look and be. It's not in the city yet. There is a general conceptual long-term plan of some potential park development there in the future. This proposed development does sit within the half-mile range of a park here just to the south that's just barely off the map. So it is within the recommended radius of a existing city park. There are also proposed sidewalks. Obviously, throughout the development, there will be a shared use path that will come north here along Wilder and will connect into the neighborhood. We do go through in the report, obviously, the Ames Plan 2040 comprehensive plan standards regarding this land use type. This is an RN3 land use designation, and RN3 is designed for areas of the city that are expanding. And so there's a variety of zoning classifications. This proposed zoning does fall into that classification. I should mention too, the proposed density will be 4.14 to 4.9 units per net acre, and that does exceed the minimum required for FSRL zones, which is 3.75. So I think that covers the basic core information about the site. As I said, there will be a preliminary plat in the future that will need to follow, also a final plat ultimately as it develops out. Do want to mention too that we did forward you an email from some residents, nearby residents in the subdivision just to the south in the Sunset Ridge neighborhood. So I can take any questions you might have now.
No connection to 500th Avenue.
That's correct.
And go ahead.
No, go ahead, ask your
No,
question.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think I have to recuse myself because I live on Wilder. I live right in that neighborhood and will be impacted by the increased traffic.
Unless you're within the 200-foot notice or you have a financial interest in
It's okay.
the property, it's not.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I like disclose that.
Yep. So
that
it's fine to
like,
disclose it, but I don't
he's like
think.
Wilder, and I'm like, yeah, that's where I live. So
Yeah, I don't think you have to exclude yourself.
Okay.
though. So under state law, it's a pretty limited set of circumstances, but disclosure is always appreciated.
okay, then we are good.
And there is no, that on the left-hand side of that map where it swoops up is not going to be a street either, is it?
Yeah.
Yep. So there is I might have neglected to include that. There is a connection point plan there to the kind of the northwest in the future as well. That east to west street that bisects through there will swing to the north.
Okay.
So when we were discussed options with the developer, there's two parcels there. There's the one that's built on towards the front, and then there's a mostly vacant parcel in the back where that road starts to curve and head north. So we talked about a north connection is needed somewhere, and we thought that was okay. It allowed for developable use of that vacant lot during preliminary plat. Maybe it gets adjusted, but the intent is to show that some version of an extension of a street further north was desirable and needed.
Emergency services will only have 2 access points until that third one comes through, correct?
Yep.
I guess I do have one question. Are some of the drainage issues that were mentioned in the email that were forwarded, are those a zoning consideration or more of a site plan consideration once the project gets to that point?
So I would just ask for everyone to know, be a little more specific in exactly which issues we're responding to.
The drainage considerations that were right along some of the northern parcels that are directly adjacent to the new development. There was some standing water sited on the northern edge of those parcels, and we saw some pictures. I just wasn't sure if that was a zoning issue or something that would be better addressed in site design, because it seems like the proposed project complies with everything from a zoning standpoint.
I think the details of how stormwater management will occur is clearly a preliminary plat issue. I think from this diagram, you can understand where the development footprint's going to be, and that open space is undefined on the south boundary of this site on exactly what it is, but there's some space. The developer's shown as an intent there, but the details would definitely be a preliminary plat issue. And then, not to be too committal, under Iowa law, you have the right to drain property, and it flows to where it flows across property lines. That doesn't mean the developer is obligated to improve off-site conditions. At the same time, until I see their preliminary plat and see their stormwater management plan, I don't want to say they're not going to necessarily improve conditions in that area either. So I think it's just a little early for staff to say what are all the expectations that will apply to that situation.
And this will come back to us again.
Preliminary plat comes back to P&Z and to City Council.
Forgive me, I haven't looked into this too much, but what is that strip of land on the northeast, on the northeast and the east sides of this parcel?
Are you
The very thin
that narrow
that's-
strip?
Yeah.
Yep. So there's a narrow, it's approximately 50 feet wide piece of property there that extends from the south and it kind of runs along the east side and then the northeast side here. That is actually a strip of land that has they're separate parcels. They are in the county. Actually, they're out in Story County, so they're outside of the city limits. That 50-foot strip, it goes to the south. There's a larger piece of land down here that is not within the city limits. And so that is like that from the past, from previous annexations, so that the property to the south can still legally be out in the county without creating an island.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh, that one narrow strip there. Okay.
Yep.
Sanitary sewer or storm sewer runs through there right now?
Sanitary sewer. That's where that northeast corner is roughly where this project will tie into the city sanitary source there.
So it'll come down the middle of through the middle there and then tie in around the backside of the.
I don't have a precise route. It'll come from somewhere on the northeast corner and then into the site. That's not yet determined how that'll work. But that's where the upsized sewer component comes in that we're asking for with the contract rezoning agreement.
Right.
Yeah, I think this, what you're looking for is attachment C.
Yeah, it goes clear around.
Yeah.
Down here.
Yeah, it ties in over here somewhere.
Yep.
Is there any other further discussion or questions for staff? And then the developer, you're here tonight. Would you like to speak?
Pass up a chance. Good evening, Commission. Justin Dodge, Hunsaker Companies, 105 South 16th Street. Okay, so simple rezoning and master plan. You guys spoke to an email. I haven't seen that, but I can guess what it says. Obviously, we were the developers on Sunset Ridge. When we didn't own the farm to the north, we couldn't change the grade of the property line. And so now that we do own the farm, we sent letters to all the neighbors and said, hey, we purchased this. We're going to be developing it, and we might be able to, convey the stormwater in that open space that's on the south side of this new farm, and might even be able to regrade on their property if they're okay with that. Obviously, we can't regrade on somebody else's property without their permission, but that way we actually get lots that tip to the back rather than conveying their stormwater across their neighbors' properties. And so the engineers have done their environmental study assessment, something to that effect, and are currently working through some designs. I haven't seen anything yet, but as soon as we've got something, there's, I think, 4 or 5 neighbors that I think we need to make things right from before. And so all 4 or 5 of those have said, yeah, we agree that there's something wrong, and we would be okay with you regrading on our property to solve those problems. Like I said, I don't have the design yet, and so I don't know what the costs are yet, but we're actively working towards that at the same time they're working on the preliminary plat and the stormwater management plan. So let's see. Yeah, go ahead.
You weren't finished yet, so it's okay.
I can talk all day, so.
I had a question
Andy has
because,
before.
yeah. So I do have a question since now I'm a part of this. So the plots that you were talking about and referencing the email that we received, are there like certain criteria that the current homeowners have to, like their yard has to meet for you to be able to regrade with them or
I
make it
haven't
right?
seen the email or emails or
Yeah.
whatever you guys have received,
Okay.
but we sent out letters and emails to,
Mhm.
well, we sent out emails to everybody that the homeowners association had emails for that I could get.
Okay.
And then everybody else we sent letters to saying, hey, if you'd like us to come look at this, give me a call. Everybody that reached out that wanted me to meet on site, walk through and made the assessments at that point in time and then had the engineers go back out and survey properties and survey this new farm too. So that way we knew. And, last thing I wanted to do was send in an excavator and a dozer and start grading, only to find out that, well, we shot ourselves in the foot, 2 steps down the road. I'd rather start with the end in mind and then work our way backwards to make sure that things are going to work properly. So, as far as criteria,
Yeah, I'm looking.
like I said, there's some, the lots I'm most concerned about. Okay, so Springbrook Circle is the cul-de-sac on the northeast corner in Sunset Ridge. Okay. So that right where Justin's cursor is at, that's Springbrook Circle. So if you go straight north up there and then a little bit to, there you go, right in through there is where, on the backside of the house, it always, sheds water away. Okay. On that north property line, the grade actually rises up. And Bill's here, so he could attest to it a lot more than I could, but it probably goes up maybe 6-7 feet, something like that, maybe, as far as the grade.
It's a pretty marked increase. I would say the last
We got it.
45 feet of our property is a pretty
Mike,
short increase.
Mike, we got to,
Yeah, sorry.
Not here.
we can't talk from the audience. You got to be at the mic.
Sorry about that. But anyway, it ramps up to the property line. And so Bill is obviously one of the neighbors that we're talking to, and we'd like to solve those problems because now we can. We couldn't before. So does that answer your question?
Do you think the drainage issues are mainly a result of grading and it's not anything related to, I know a lot of times with new developments, like you use fill type that may not be as able to infiltrate. Do you think it's related to that, or do you think it is related to grading?
It's 100% grading.
Okay, great.
How wide is the green space strip there that you're going to be using for, to convey water away?
That's our intent.
No, how wide is it?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think we were talking maybe 20 feet, but I'm not sure exactly what the engineers put on this exhibit. More than enough to convey stormwater.
Okay.
So I was looking at the email here, and it looks like the concern was that you would be only addressing homes that had berms on them for helping to mitigate drainage issues.
Okay.
And I didn't know if
So
I just wanted, if you could
Yeah.
address whether that's
Okay.
your view on that. I don't even know what a
that
berm
is.
is. I'm going to be honest.
It's like a windrow of dirt.
Okay.
Okay. And so believe that regrading that property line will solve a lot of their problems.
Okay.
There have been neighbors that I've talked to that I don't believe that their lot was properly graded by their builders. And so it's flatter and it doesn't have the slope to drain that water away. I'm not going to go in there and fix those problems. But what we have done is visited about allowing those neighbors to put tiles in on their own that would drain their backyards into this future swale.
Okay. That much more clear for me. Thank you.
You look puzzled, John?
Yes. So that you're going to tile that 20-foot wide area?
Not sure on tiling. So the open space would be
Because
more of a
if they-
swale.
If they tile in their yard back to.
So they were
to
getting
that-
a little far into the details of a plat right now. If we're
He
talking
opened
about,
it up.
well, but we're not talking about a preliminary plat. So
Yeah.
details about stormwater conveyance, there's just not criteria to deal with that. Whether it's tiled, piped, overland flow, none of that's relevant to a rezoning level. That is all details that have to be reviewed by the city first and then determine if it meets city codes or not. And then from there, we go into public comment and review and decide how it fits in compatibility with the neighborhood. So
And that will be addressed by you.
will be addressed by the city of Ames,
You.
the municipal engineer and the planning division. Yes.
You.
So I mean, it's time to talk about conveyance and be very clear that those are issues that are going to be coming up, but to talk about how it's going to be dealt with, that's just not something that's really on the table tonight.
Right,
And
we're-
my question was, who was going to, like, would he be addressing? What issues would he be addressing?
Yeah.
Or would Hunziker be addressing in the development? So,
And so I brought it up only because you guys received some information and some concerns from neighbors, and I want to help address those comments. And to be brutally honest, our obligation is zero. However, that's not the right thing to do. And so I believe we're going above and beyond and doing some outreach and trying to fix some things that we couldn't get quite the way that we wanted to be the first go around. So,
thank you for answering. the
And all we were
question.
trying to do is convey that we're listening to the public too.
you bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll open up the comment period. If anybody from the public would like to speak, please come forward to the lectern.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah. And introduce yourself.
Sure. Bill Holes, I live at 5215 Westfield, and I live at one of those two main houses that Justin has been referring to. He was very kind to send us emails. We had some verbal conversation as well regarding the berm. We happen to have one of the two houses involved with the largest berm of all. So I've got some pictures I took today. There's this one, and then swipe back one, and you'll see the ending of that. But what happens is we have a fairly large berm. I'll call it a berm with a swale at the base of that berm. And when we get heavy rains, it's like a river. I mean, it's a pretty good flow of water. And that water ends up flowing at one of those two pictures. It ends up flowing out into the farm field currently. So when that gets developed, that's going to have to be addressed in some fashion. And yes, Justin's correct that he has made this an option for us to have this area flattened. At the time we bought the property in August of 2020, we expressed some concern about that berm being there, but it was a matter of we either buy the house or we didn't. So we went ahead and bought it. It has no impact on our house proper, but there will, I would assume, be maybe a little erosion over a period of years if we didn't address it with a French drain or in some other fashion. But currently, right now, the neighbor immediately to our east has about the same type of berm situation as we do. And there's, if you look at this picture, this little wedge-shaped property and then this property here have a little bit of uptick, but it's these two properties, and this is where we live here, have the big berm. So you get a flow of water coming in here, and the egress is out into the field currently. So I think it's the reason why it was brought up to us is because the ideal situation would be to flatten that berm out. But we have a very expensive galvanized fence we installed for our dog shortly after we moved in. And I expressed to Justin, I'm all for grading the ground, but we do not want to pay for another fence. And there was about half of the backyard fence that would have to be pulled up. So we do not want to either be financially obligated for pulling it up or reinstalling it. And I know that we're getting into details, but it's good to bring it up now, I believe. So, and the other thing is resodding. It's going to have to be resodded. So, and I don't want to foot the bill for that either. So, I know we're in the preliminary, so I just wanted to make sure I was on record that I'm expressing my views here tonight. The other thing is that if you look at can you scroll up a little bit on this picture maybe, or not? Oh, there you go. So currently in the residence of Sunset Ridge, you have nice green space here. You have green space here, some more green space here. And if you look what's proposed for us it's a little sliver. So it's not really congruent with what's being done currently with Sunset Ridge. And you'll notice all the green spaces on the north side. Well, the north side, if you go beyond that property line, there's a proposed park. So it's very curious why there would be green space on the north side rather than the south side to be to mimic what's already in the existing Sunset Ridge. So there's a number of people that have met. We expressed concern that we would like to kind of see that flip-flopped. But I guess beyond suggesting that that be looked at a little bit more, there's nothing more, I guess, we can do other than mention it to you guys tonight. But it's just not, if you look at that, that's a little sliver of green space, and then you've got houses. And so unless there's some kind of engineering reason why that green space, or at least part of that green space, could be extended further from the backyards of all the north houses at the existing Sunset Ridge, expanded a little bit further north, which I've not heard of any engineering reason why that couldn't be done, then I guess we would collectively suggest that more green space be between the existing north edge of Sunset Ridge and the proposed building of the new houses. And then finally, it's been proposed 55 to 65 houses. I just wondered what constitutes building 55 versus 65 houses. So anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
Are you in an HOH?
HOA? Yeah, we are.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for him? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public input portion of this item. Any other discussion from amongst the members here? Applicant, do you have anything else you'd like to say too?
Yep, just to answer Bill's question about the open space. So the reason it's on the north side is because the stormwater flows to the north. And so as part of our stormwater management plan and the city code, we have to treat that stormwater. And so treating it on the north spot in the lower areas is what is most desirable.
Okay.
That's it. Thanks.
Okay, any other discussion amongst ourselves here? Hearing none, I would welcome some sort of action.
All right, I'm going to do my first one. I motion that we recommend that the city council approve the rezoning of 28.58 acres at 798 500th Avenue from agricultural A to floating suburban residential low density FSRL with a master plan and with the following conditions: that a contract rezoning will be finalized with the developer to enumerate the terms of sanitary sewer trunk line construction through the site.
It's alternative
That
one.
is alternative one, yes.
Yes.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The item passes. Next item on the agenda is zoning text amendment for CSC building materials to amend the 50% clay brick material requirement for all building facades.
Julie Gould's going to present that. If I want to give her a second to get up here. Justin, can you shut the door?
Everybody likes to stand right outside that door.
When did that start?
I mean, I would do if I didn't know.
Okay, gonna use this at first and then switch to the computer. So we'll see how this works. This I just wanted to put up here for you so you can see the black boundary is horrible glare, is all of the includes all the properties that are zoned CSC, campus, town, commercial. So you can see, just kind of get an idea. The north border is Lincoln Way, and then this is Welch Avenue, just kind of to give you an idea of location. So we just saw a text amendment to the zoning district for that mid-block break a couple weeks ago. This would be a text amendment to that same table, but it would address building materials. Currently, it says that each visible facade needs to have at least 50% clay brick building materials. That calculation does exclude the windows and the doors. So it gives them a little bit of leeway. We currently have a development application in for 2516 Lincoln Way. They are going to build a building that is in a situation on the east property line where it'll be set as with 0 setback. And so in order to construct clay brick, they would have to get a construction easement to be on the neighboring property, or change their product and their material. So they requested the attachment in your packet. They sent a letter in requesting a text amendment to change the requirement to 50% clay brick on the overall building. So you would still be getting the same amount of brick in their request. It just would not necessarily be on all 4 facades if it's a 4-sided building, all visible facades. So depending on the design of the building, you could have 1 or more facades that did not have clay brick on it at all. We have no other building material requirements right now. So your other accent building materials can be anything at this point. Typically we see some type of concrete product, or other types of building materials, EFS, things like that. So council was okay with moving forward with the text amendment, with consideration of text amendment, and as long as it applied only to that 0 setback situation. They were concerned that they were just concerned of the overall aesthetics. If we do not require the clay brick, it's a visible facade, what that could look like in a variety of situations. So this is a little atypical for a text amendment, as we did not bring you any specific language. We brought you 3 options. The first one is basically their request. So it's what I kind of already explained, 50% over the entire building, but no other type of building material requirements. And so that would allow that 0 setback wall to not have clay brick on it. We would likely, given council's concern for design aesthetics, we might work with them for or change the code to, some type of language to work with staff on the aesthetics or other building materials that may be allowed or unallowed. Option 2 is, again, at that 0 setback property line situation, that they would need to have more than 50% clay on the entire building. And we would have a new building standard for that aesthetic, for color, non-clay brick on that wall if it's visible. And then option 3 would be allow a material exception in general, just across the board, no clay brick requirement anymore, but allow a brick looking material, which depending on what that is, the quality, could be high, it could be low, it could be, staff would want to work with the applicant to have something that doesn't deteriorate quickly, given our, weather extremes in the Midwest. We can go through a couple examples. This is just all from Street View. Maybe let me see here. So this is current, present day. you can see that this is just to show you that, a lot of the older buildings are just concrete masonry units or concrete buildings. And that's what you're seeing on Copyworks and the Mr. Burrito building. You can see there on some other facades, you see brick and just concrete tilt-up panels. This is looking the other way. So again, this wall would be completely covered up with their new building. They're going to have a patio, which will be fully enclosed, possibly have a roof on it. That's undetermined at this point, but it would be 1-story patio with walls, so you would not see this facade. This is what it used to look like. So this is back in 2017-18, before it was actually torn down. And I just wanted to show this because there are other built environment, streetscaping things that come into play. So yes, a 2-story, Mr. Burrito's only 1 story, a 2-story building would have some visibility. This large opening is not going to be there in their new plan because they are, again, building up to that property line. But you will be able to see, this is an example of when you have more stories built right next to less stories, there could be some situations where it's still visible. This is just an example of a variety of building materials that are in Campus Town. Over the years, the building material requirement has kind of evolved from no standards to a masonry product, which meant plain concrete masonry units, which are just concrete blocks, colored blocks, and then it eventually evolved into the clay brick requirement that exists today. And then this is just also, again, just kind of trying to give you an example of why it is important to maybe pay attention to the design aesthetics, even when it still is a 0 setback line, because again, you will have taller buildings next to shorter buildings. As the rest of Campus Town redevelops, it's possible that, given the lot sizes, you could run into this situation quite often. Especially if you have one lot develop and the adjacent property doesn't have developed for some time. So again, we didn't propose any specific language, but I think staff's preference is option 2. We feel that that's still going to be able to allow us to work with an applicant and get a high quality building material requirements and a nice looking building that will last over time and still be inviting. So with that, I can answer any questions you have.
So 0 setback side on the proposed building,
Mm-hmm.
you'll be able to see that side?
A little bit, because when so let me see. So the new building is going to be 2-story on that east property line.
And that's a 0 setback.
At the 0 setback. So you won't see these 2 walls on Copyworks and Mr. Burrito, and you won't see the bottom half of their wall, but you will see the 2nd story on their wall. So it's a situation like this when you look down the street. You can see how this building stands up higher than this. Again, it's not the exact same proportions, but you can see how this would be visible still. So we would want to pay attention to what that looks like, so we're not getting just a plain concrete wall. The applicant is not here. They're from out of state. They did watch the council meeting when the text amendment was initiated, and I just received an email from them. They did have a building material in mind that does seem to replicate clay brick very well compared to a lot of other materials that we know that are out there. And they basically said in their email, given council's comments and the motion that they made regarding the design aesthetics and the 0 lot only in situations of 0 lot long, option 2 or 3 would work for them.
So now they don't want option 1?
Well, yeah, they do, but they understood how how significant, or I guess not significant, but how much council and the planning department does care about the building material quality and what the finished product looks like. So they are willing, so instead of just having a free for all with the rest of the building materials, they can make what they want to use will fit in with options 2 and 3. And I think both of those options too, I think provide a good amount of, I don't want to say control, but ability for flexibility in design and material with future redevelopment, since we don't know what will come in size or,
So option 2 will, you guys will,
option 2 is
will make sure that it looks like the surrounding buildings or more
yeah.
aesthetically pleasing.
I think that I'm going to step in for just a second.
I knew you would.
The rationale for the request is that in a zero lot line situation, if they're not able to obtain a construction easement from someone else, they can't do external facing on their building material because they won't have the right to be on someone else's property to apply clay brick or really apply stucco, do any of those things. So they need a material that they can set in place to do that, which would, if you have a good lead time, concrete panels with clay bricks meet the standard. They don't have the lead time to do that. It's a different construction material. It has a lot of other factors. The other option is to lay block. And you can still face block, but again, if you can't get on that other property, you can't face block very easy. So understanding the motivation for this is constructability more than cost. If that's really the rationale, there's only so much planning can do about that exterior material. We can require coloring. We wouldn't be able to require something else that again requires a construction easement to apply to the facade.
Right,
so I think
I
it's
understand that.
minimally, it'll be better than bare minimum, which would be a plain concrete block. We can get beyond that. You can get integral color. You can get mortar that would match. You can make it look slightly better, and it's likely going to be elevated, so you're probably not experiencing it at eye level. Again, not that it won't be visible. I think we can walk around. We went and walked around Campus Town on Tuesday just to kind of look at the varying materials that are all over the place over the last 30 years.
All over the place.
All over the
All
place,
over.
literally.
And that's what I'm trying to get
Yeah.
at, is that you're trying to make it look
A little more cohesive. I think in option 2, you're going to get more cohesion. You're not going to be like, wow, look at that building material, but it's going to be probably a little blend in just slightly better. And you
Okay,
hopefully
that's what I
wouldn't
was-
notice it the way you might notice things now is like a jarring change from one thing to another.
right stucco over masonry or
Well, even stucco could be fine. It's just
no, I mean that's what we have now.
In
or
some
you have
ways,
plain
yes.
block
Yeah.
and go down Stanton and we have plain block as the primary building material on many buildings or on a couple of buildings.
So and number 2 will have it so that you guys can
I think, yeah, we
get
get,
more
We would draft with
more
option,
blending.
Yeah, with option 2, the language that we draft and that we propose to council would, have the 50% clay brick for the whole building. So you're still getting that same required amount of brick that you would today, clay brick that you would today, but then it would include some type of additional language to address the aesthetic and the coloring of the new material or
The
the other
blending.
material.
Okay.
and then in option 3, which they would like to use, they're very much in favor of option 3. They know that we've had some hesitancy about it because again, they have experience with a product that they think is great. We haven't used it, so we're a little more hesitant. So if we really want to go beyond blending, which I would say is the best way to describe option 2, option 3 could maybe get you a higher grade of appearance, but specifying what that material is and how staff's going to truly judge its quality is the hard part with number 3. So they can buy a block that's going to be formatted, look like a clay brick, both dimension and coloring, and it can look pretty darn close to a brick building, but I can't specify that you have to use one particular manufacturer's product.
Right,
Oh,
but
yeah.
what
That's what
I've
makes-
seen on residential houses is the facing over the brick.
So that's still not what it is. Option 3 is a for the better. It's got kind of like an etched pattern into the concrete block. It's
Right.
not applied. So again, they can constructability just set it on the property line and it'll look like a
Like
finished
press-
product
Yeah, I understand what the,
versus the facing materials, which is what we see in a lot of times is the facing materials. But that zero lot line condition is about setting a product in that you don't have to face. So that's where they would love option 3. And I'm not saying it's a bad option, other than I think it's hard for staff to consistently administer, but it may get you a better look in some cases because the product selection could be higher quality than just the blending approach.
right, what I'm saying is on some of these residential places where they have that patterned cement and they've covered some of it up with some kind of cement facing that does not last.
Mhm.
And that's what, you guys will have control over the quality of the product more on number 2 than number 3, correct?
I think 3 should principally be considered a coloring control. 3 would be a different material probably. 3 would definitely be a different material. I think 2 in most situations is a coloring control. Would you agree with that, Julie? That's kind of the main emphasis, and 2 is controlling color.
No,
I like the idea with
How are we gonna,
the brick.
give it backwards.
2 is our alternative, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
3 is the substitute material.
2 says a brick standard for the whole building, 50% clay brick standard for the whole building, and require a new building material standard for aesthetic and color for non-clay brick building materials. And then 3 is remove the clay brick material requirement and allow a different high quality material that can replicate brick in appearance. So they're very similar, but
2 would come closer to what we see on the facing parts of Campus Town now.
the
fronts,
mix, the
front.
variety of materials, yes.
So you're talking about not the zero lot line wall, you're talking about the other facades?
I'm talking like the front.
Sorry, okay, yeah.
So where
And even with 3, we can make the fronts be what you're used to seeing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was thinking solely about the zero lot
No.
line wall,
That's
not
what I was
the
thinking.
other walls.
But I just think we need to protect what Campus Town looks like now at least on the fronts.
Yeah, I think in council's comments too, when we get to the final language between the options we pick, I think there's gonna be a prioritizing of any brick towards the front or other highly
Okay.
visible facades. So if you have a
Because 3
side,
they could do most anything, and make it kind of a fake bricky looking.
yeah, we would, if 3 was chosen, we would still deal with the front facades and try to get to what we've been seeing. And how we do that, we would figure out. a way
But
to
2
do
would
that.
bring it
2
better.
would probably default to what you're expecting to see on the fronts of buildings, because most people are going to spend their money on the front
Right.
and not just choose to kind of thumb their nose at us and say, I'm putting it on the back just because I can. It could happen.
It's
It
happened.
could happen.
If it can happen, it will happen.
Night, yep. But I would agree. I think in 2, it's going to be the most similar to what you've been experiencing probably over the last 10 years. Would you agree with that?
Yes,
I guess just confirming that so with 2, there would still be other building materials as well. And, there's been a lot of progress in Campus Town. Like, we don't want certain materials back there. So would you expect to have certain materials still not allowed as that secondary material? Would you specify that at all, or would that apply in the rest
I
of the?
think if somebody, I guess I don't know if we would write it into the code, but I think if somebody came in with just a
Like, I'm thinking-
bricks, concrete colored. clay
Yes, I'm
masonry
thinking
block,
the gray
like,
concrete.
I
I'm
think
thinking
we
your
would
metal, anything like that, that we
Yeah.
really don't want to see on a wall that would be in any way partially visible. That's what we're trying to get away
Yeah.
from in that area. That's the main thing when I saw this text amendment, that I
Mhm.
just wanted to make sure that that was covered, even if it was a little bit of additional staff review on that.
I don't know that it is covered. So, for example, you had the Kingland facade up.
I did.
So Kingland has a mix of essentially three materials. One of those is architectural metal panels right there in the middle at their lobby entrance.
Architectural metal panels is okay.
Okay, so that's where it gets tricky when you start to, that one's
You can
okay.
specify those things, right?
Yeah.
You can
Well, it's
specify
To
that.
some degree.
It's kind of
And
an
architectural metal panels vary significantly in quality.
I see.
It depends a lot on thickness and other things that we just normally aren't involved in that kind of a choice. I think so. Anywhere in Campus Town, it's 50% clay brick and then anything else. That's the standard. Now, if you get an incentive from the city, it's different. So if you get an incentive from the city, the tax abatement program then triggers a 100% brick requirement. So that's why probably every building that's been built in Campus Town has gotten some sort of incentive in the last 10 years. That's why you're seeing a more robust material treatment on those new buildings than just the default of the zoning ordinance, because they were mandated to do 100% brick for the first 4 floors.
That's what I say. That's Kingman, I guess you call it.
Yep, Kingland building, yeah.
Looks a little bit out of place from
Yep, they
what
chose.
traditional Campus Town has looked like to me.
Yeah, they tried to go with a more modern take with
Yeah.
some sympathetic features with the bricks to try to
Didn't
be
work.
compatible, but they weren't trying to mimic historic Campus Town either. Yeah.
And that's,
So
And
that's
when Kingland was constructed, was it 50% of each facade, or was that constructed before it was each facade? Because there was a time when it did not say of
It
each
was-
facade.
it was more than any other material on the building, but because it was through city council review, it was as approved by city council.
Okay.
It wasn't a staff reviewed decision about all of the material choices on that building. City council approved it because of a separate development agreement that went along with it.
It's not included on any of the pictures that I included, but on Chamberlain, there's that newer building, the Thai restaurant is in it. I can't think of the name of it, but it's gray. It's got a lot of gray, but it's brick, and then it uses a product. It meets the 50% requirement of clay brick, and then it uses another product, paneling product. I think it's called like Nichihao, but I would say, yeah,
Chamberlain?
on Keith's building.
Yeah, Chamberlain.
Yeah, what's that called? It's across the street from the fire
Fire
station
restaurant.
on the other side of Chamberlain. I can't remember the name of it though.
So I think in option 2, I don't think we are, director council is expecting to remove the option for 50% of the building to be another material. It's that incentive that's kicked it up to 100% in the past. And then the Brothers project is not asking for an incentive. So if they came back and said, I want an incentive, the whole tax amendment would be moot.
Right.
Because they would automatically trigger the 100% brick. And we're pretty clear we're not willing to walk back on an incentive program, the upgrade of expectations.
and all I was saying is I'd like historic Campus Town instead of more like the Kingman building. And number 2 would get you more towards traditional Campus Town look.
I don't know that it would or wouldn't. I would say I'm neutral on whether that would happen or not happen. I don't think I don't think it's walking it back. I don't know that it advances that idea any further than current standards though either. I don't think we're diluting the quality under alternative 2. So if you've seen what's been done and you think that's the good approach, I think 2 is consistent with that. I don't think it dilutes it, but I don't think it takes it a step further either. Because it's still just a 50% brick requirement.
Right. And that's what the traditional Campus Town look is that brick.
It's principally on the front facade to be brick. Yeah. Don't disagree with that. It's the other sides that are usually the ones that we're trying to upgrade.
For example, like this white wall, if this were a new building, it was visible. So 50% of that area would have had to have been clay brick if this were new construction.
And the
It's probably concrete is
And the
today.
Chica Shack's a great example too. The
Yeah.
base is 50% brick. The top is 50% wood paneling or siding.
Yeah.
You could still build that today in Campus Town because it's probably not proportionally 50%, but you can get the idea of what that
Right.
I guess I had one other thought about this. So this is obviously a hardship for this particular parcel owner, and they're having a particular circumstance to where they, for one reason or another, can't get the easement that they need to accommodate, to follow the rules that are in place. I know that in Campus Town and in this area, we will have future issues with zero lot line redevelopment. But do you think that this circumstance to where a zero lot line is being redeveloped and they won't be able to get the easement will come up again? I guess my question is, do you think a variance is more appropriate for this, or is changing the code more so getting ahead of it so that you can apply consistent conditions?
I think that changing the code, I don't know that it would meet the variance criteria, all of the criteria required for a variance, but I do think, as you know, if and when the 100 and 200 block of Welch should start to redevelop, or Chamberlain on the west side of Welch, I think this will come up more often than we think.
Okay, so getting ahead of it is the goal.
So I think it's more of a getting ahead of it situation.
Okay.
We don't require to build zero lot line. So that's the biggest hurdle. Anytime you want a variance, if it's not required of you, it's really hard to justify a preference or a choice. So that's why we didn't lead them down that path.
Yes, but there's also an FAR requirement in Campus Town, which that also leads you to build as much as you can, depending on the height of your building.
And we do require a minimum of 25 feet in height too. So these 1-story structures, if they were to be replaced, they're going to have at least a 2-story volume. So Brothers is doing that with their project. They have floor area in the second floor. So they have a mix of floor area in that 2nd-story space, and then they also have a volume of 2nd floor to meet that height requirement. So I think that's why when Julie and I talked this through, we do expect it to come back just because of all of our other standards. The smaller the site, the harder it is to do. We're all looking at these large 1-acre redevelopment projects that have space to do things, and that's a little different on these smaller sites.
Where's the barbershop at there? It's been a while since I've been there.
I think it's the awning behind the SIPs sign, I think.
Okay, because that one will be probably redeveloped sooner than anything else down there.
So I think we're just looking for, I think it's pretty clear what we think 1, 2, and 3 means. We're looking for a recommendation from the council on to approach the language of the text amendment under 1, 2, or 3 as an alternative. And then it's a pretty straightforward amendment when we write it. We're not rewriting a whole design code. It's tweaking one sentence to make that work.
And so to correlate, like alternative 1 is option 1, alternative 2 is option 2, alternative 3, option 3. I just want to make sure. Let me go to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, it seems like that would be logical, but I would be the one to get it wrong. So I'd be like, hey, let's do this.
Yes.
Not what I meant to say.
So just to be clear, the argument against option 3 is that there's maybe not so much, is it that there's not certainty over the quality of the material? Is that?
Yeah.
Because a lot of these materials that simulate clay brick can look very similar, but is that the concern with option 3, I guess?
I think quality, and then we also don't know what is yet to come. So if we get too specific, it might not include a better product down the road, but it might
have to change it
a
again.
product that we don't necessarily know won't last.
I think when I think of it from an administrative perspective, if it's the approach we want to go because we think it's better, we'll make it work. I think we just had some hesitancy of recommending it because we don't have experience with it. And it's a little bit harder for me to say, yeah, I know it's going to work because I've done it 5 times before and I know what we need to do. And we might have to feel that out. You might get a slightly less predictable result if it's at staff's discretion, but at the same time, it might be better overall. So there's a trade-off with that one. I think 2 is very most likely predictable. So again, if people want, we can work with any of these 3. We just thought 2 was probably the safer one.
It's probably the most equitable as for us to apply, since we don't know what size what
Yes.
buildings will look like, what
Say
materials.
everything up front. That
I was leaning towards number one, but if you guys can have, I don't want to say more control, but more
Allows-
blending.
Yeah,
They would. then-
One just takes it like just slightly more expectations than one, just barely more.
I mean, if we did one in that case, that would basically mean that they could construct their front wall with
Yeah.
brick, their west wall, because that's the non-problem wall with
Mhm.
brick, and then the other two walls could just be straight up EFS.
No, the backside would have to be.
No,
No,
because
'cause
it's
it's
50%
50% of the
across the whole building.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you're opening
Mhm.
up a
Yes.
scenario to
Mhm.
where you'll have full EFS walls or full anything goes walls because nothing is listed
Yeah,
there.
and that's what I don't think city council wants, and I don't think it should be go. You know, being the Wild West on the other walls, because that back wall is viewable from that parking lot.
In this case it is, but yeah,
It
so
might not
not,
be
but
in-
not every site's going to be that way.
Mhm.
So
I
it's
understand.
really hard to, that's why, so you're hearing why 4 years ago I recommended changing it so that it was just every wall had to have some, because there's just too much variability to say exactly how to do it. And then this isn't reasonable. I mean, it's a reasonable issue to say, hey, it's really hard to
Right.
meet all of your expectations if I can't get that construction easement, or I have to give up square footage for constructability reasons. I mean, we would prefer to have the street wall of the building and have that presence on the street. So if we want to support that look, it's not unreasonable to make this adjustment one way or another to support it.
Are we ready?
Are there any other discussion? Okay, we'll open up the public comment period. Does anybody have any comments to make regarding this item? What's that?
Oh, I was gonna say, no public.
It's public.
I'm
Anyway, seeing-
sorry, I know. I took them off so I could read.
Seeing none, we'll close the comment period. Any other discussion or any other action you would like to take?
I'm leaning towards number two now. I don't know about anybody else, but, I was leaning very heavily towards number one. But if it just gives a little bit more blending to Kelly and crew.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want more visible brick, two's a better option, is my
Yeah.
understanding, I guess. But that's how I understand it.
Okay. You ready?
Does anybody would like to make make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I recommend alternative number two, the Planning and Zoning Commission can recommend approval of the proposed text amendment for an exception for zero lot line buildings to meet more than 50% clay brick standard for the whole building and require new building materials for aesthetic and color for non-clay brick building materials.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, say nay. Motion is passed. Item 8 on the agenda is the zoning text amendment for approval authority and application requirements.
Yeah, so tonight there's a kind of a laundry list of things that we're catching up on in terms of administration. And as I indicated, there's a couple of role changes planned in terms of responsibilities across City Hall. And for the most part, it's coming to the planning department. We're reviewing all these materials anyway, so the customer isn't going to be affected by this. It's more internal. We have a new app. It's not new anymore, but we have a different application intake process and permitting software where they run everything through. So it really needs to come to us for payment and do a lot of things. So those kinds of changes are pretty straightforward. In addition to that, some of the roles in support of the Zoning Board of Adjustment are changing. Historically, the city clerk has been a point of contact, but again, it would be then funneled back to the Planning and Housing Department to review. We're going to take over administrative support of that board. So again, municipal code needs to be adjusted to reflect where applications go for that. Now, there is a little bit more to that. We are trying to streamline the ZBA process a little bit. It has a requirement that every application that goes to the ZBA is published in the newspaper. it's kind of a painstaking thing to do for something as simple as a home occupation for somebody to have to go through the process of publishing it. It extends timelines and has an additional cost. In our view as staff, it has minimal to no benefit for those efforts of cost and time compared to the on-site posting and the direct mailing to abutting neighbors. So we think our notice expectations are met still with what we would normally do, and the publication requirement can go away. So that's probably one of the more significant changes is just how notice procedures work. The other issue with Zoning Board of Adjustment is it's a 5-member board, and some of you have experienced issues with quorum and voting. And we've had on occasion similar questions come up. If there's 3 members present, the way it's currently worded, you must have 3 affirmative votes to have any decision from the board. So we are recommending to change that to a majority of the quorum. So then a 2-1 vote would be a decision by the board versus no action. So a 2-1 vote is considered no action right now by the board. The board could still continue the item if they want to have more members present. And then as a safeguard for an applicant, if they're concerned about not having 4 or 5 members present and only 3, they would have the right to request to be continued at the hearing to a future meeting to ensure they have opportunity to have more people present to do that. So we're trying to safeguard the applicant a little bit, but then also if it's able to move forward, the applicant wants to move forward, then a 2-1 vote would be a deciding factor there. So that's a little bit of a tweak there. The code is the one that again specifies how a vote is done in your situation. It's partially Robert's rules and it's partially municipal code, depending on the item type, how you have to vote. But the board is always 3 votes to make a decision. And then when you look at the application procedures, you can see I have a number of changes in Article 15. Some of them are related to going to online applications. Some of them is to update things that are just kind of out of date, don't match practice, aren't exactly relevant. And then you can see some other changes again with, I'll point you to the minor changes. That's may seem significant, but it's something that's relatively recent in our code to deal with minor changes as staff for a number of different applications. And last year when we created the PUD overlay, we created a system that as staff we thought was a little more defined for staff to make choices on whether it's minor or major. And we would now like to bring that system and apply it to all site plans or all special use permits. I think the current language is a little more vague, less predictable on what staff can and can't grant. The replacement language is more predictable and has a little more numerical based decision factors rather than the qualitative stuff that's there now. It's a little harder to judge. Or it gets very, very, very rigid, very, very quick and doesn't necessarily meet the intent. So there will be some other corresponding changes in the other 12 chapters of 12 articles of chapter 29. I didn't print out every page where there might be a tweak to planning director or to comprehensive plan instead of LUPP. So know that other pages will be in the ultimate ordinance that gets adopted. But the core issues are what I've attached for your review here. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer what we're trying to accomplish with these.
You're still planning to do everything on site as far as like the sign posting?
Yep. So none of the
things.
noticing that we would do for your items changes. It's just CBA. Under state law, publication is still required. That happens. It appears that we locally decided to publish ZBA items. I don't believe if state law requires it, then we won't obviously nullify that requirement. We don't think it does. Stuff that comes to P&Z has to get published sometimes. The stuff that goes to council still gets published. It's just the ZBA that's affected by that.
Would that be put on the city website?
It will when it becomes our department. ZBA stuff is not posted and managed the same as the Planning and Zoning Commission agendas. So when we take it over, we'll treat it just like the Planning and Zoning Commission about making it available online.
I have a little bit of angst on the absence of a sign posting does not on page number.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting what you guys feel about that. So to be brutally honest, in certain weeks, which will maybe once every 2 years, we run out of signs. and we have to prioritize like, is it really an application that has interested parties or something like that? And that only happens when we might have 3 meetings in a week. So when the blue moon comes, we could have an HPC, a city council, and a zoning board of adjustment in 3 days in a row. And who knows how many items that is. It is very, very rare that happens. The way the code is written right now, it allows for the board, whoever that is, if there's an error in noticing or the intent is met for the board to decide that. So by putting that statement in, I think we're trying to affirmatively say that if the mailed notice, which is the state law legal requirement, is done, and there's another reason why a sign couldn't be posted, or in the case where we did post a sign and lo and behold it disappeared, which happens, that's not an excuse either for saying it wasn't notified correctly. So that we were just trying to do
If you
that.
posted the sign, though, you've met the requirement.
I would argue yes. So that's what I would argue. Yeah.
And well, I think that's a legal reasoning too. As long as the city has posted the sign is posted. And what we're trying,
Yeah.
if somebody else takes it away, that they're trying to invalidate it is what they're trying to do.
Or they might just want a trophy for their room and not try and invalidate the process.
If the sign,
But what I'm concerned about is if you take away the sign placement.
It's not our intent to take them away. It would be,
Yeah, but that's what it does.
yeah. So we would still be, the code section requires us to do it. If there's a reason it's not present, that statement obviously leads towards it's okay if you did the rest of the notification. And it may be okay without that statement, but it clearly makes it okay if that is in there.
But it's also,
It doesn't
it lets you off the hook for not having signs.
But it doesn't authorize me to just skip it because I wanted to leave early on Friday and not post a sign. That's not the intent.
Really not the intent, but you see what I mean?
I get there could be some concern about that. So that could definitely be something is recommended to not be included.
yeah, the only question I have on that is if you have a requirement in code for the sign, but then you're saying that the absence of a sign, like you're saying, to me, it doesn't make sense why that would be in there because the requirement for a sign posting still exists, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to take out that requirement, I would just take it out of the code, I guess.
Well, no one wants to take it out. I think
Right,
it's
no,
one of the
no,
more
I know
valuable
what I'm
tools
saying,
that we have.
But if you have it in there and you have another line that says you don't need it, don't those conflict? I'm not saying you don't need it, but if it's not there.
I don't read it that way because I read it as I'm expected to post signs. If the sign does not happen to be there, it doesn't invalidate the other mandatory noticing requirements is how I read it.
Okay.
I'm still directed to do it.
Right.
If it's not there,
Fine.
it doesn't invalidate the process.
Right.
It's not meant to be contradictory. I know.
But yes, but it is.
It's not.
No, it is.
Again, it is also addressing when signs disappear. That was
No,
also
'cause you
part of
can-
our equation.
I take it when you place a sign, you take a picture of the placement. You should. You should.
We don't.
Circumstance.
So the way it's written,
If a sign were
so
taken.
if somebody came to a hearing in front of the commission and said, I've never seen a sign posted in front of the site for a preliminary plat, they can say notice is invalid. You can't hear this item. So then the code would say, okay, if that's an assertion by someone from the public, then essentially you got to take testimony and decide if the intent of the noticing was truly met or not. So you would have to decide if I said, well, I sent Janet out to go post the sign and she told me she did it. You would have to take testimony and say, yep, there's substantial evidence or there's not, and we're not going to invalidate the noticing process.
Okay.
So there's a provision in the code for whichever board is affected to make a decision if notice, I can't remember the wording here, I have it up. So the standard is compliance with notice requirements. Notice under this ordinance shall be deemed to be complete when there is a substantial compliance with the applicable requirements. Minor deviations shall not be deemed to impair the notice. There's some language in there about, if we mailed it and you didn't get it, it's not our fault, the post office. There's some other things in there. So instead of arguing whether the sign was posted or not, that section would preempt it and just say, well, the other matters were done, and that's consistent with minimum state law. So the posting is a local requirement. It's not a minimum state law requirement.
Okay, so is that addition then even needed then, if it could fall under that existing?
It just clearly
Clarifies it. I guess.
puts that. And actually, now that we've talked about it, I would maybe move that language under that other list of
It's right
things
after
that are in the compliance area rather than in the posting area.
Yeah.
Again, the city attorney hasn't gone through and said whether they would put it exactly where I put
So how do we,
say that?
yeah, how do we,
it. If you don't want it, you would
no, I don't.
No, what you just said. the
then you
last
would make
thing
it in
to
a
move it.
motion. That'd be the city attorney's choice. City attorney's
So that's
choice.
not-
I can suggest how I want the code to be written. The city attorney gets to choose how the code is written.
Well, yeah. I was just thinking, like, when we go to do it, like, sometimes we have.
I don't believe if you're okay with it being in there, you should recommend moving it. I think you should only recommend if something needs to be deleted or something's not clear.
That's what we need to know. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, I think after you explain that, I think it makes sense to have it in there. So, yeah.
And I disagree. I don't think it should be in there, that sign requirement. You know, as long as they can prove it, and they can, if, in testimony with, if Janet or whoever it was comes in and says, yeah, I posted it. Or if they took a picture of it. So with a cell phone, it'd be really easy to solve it.
How often does that come up?
Not
The missing sign.
Oh, yeah.
Or just proving testimony in general.
We have blizzards sometimes and we don't see signs for 3 months.
duration.
So there's
Yeah.
there
I mean,
are
like, how often does that
That's a gun.
scenario that
Yeah.
you just mentioned come up where someone's like, well, you didn't post it, and then they like challenge you as to whether it was posted?
I don't know maybe once in 8 years at this board has anybody ever argued that notice was inadequate. Might have been before you were here, John. I think once maybe.
Okay. I mean,
And usually it's I didn't get the letter. It's not that I didn't see the sign. And we only require one sign. I mean, you could have 100-acre site and we require one sign. So it's not obvious you would even see it.
yeah, I'm just wondering because,
I feel
not
like
meant to argue with you, but
if
just.
it's that infrequently though, like the first thing when I saw the writing on it, I was like, whoa, are they, I immediately thought, what is the intention of staff? Are they intending to put a sign out every time? Because that is a really powerful tool for rezoning to let people know in
Yes.
the area that
We
something
do
is happening.
expect to do that. And we were trying to cover is it gets removed. To be really honest, the week where we have 13 applications and we have 11 signs,
But is that an excuse for not signing?
it is if the sign disappeared last week and I can't produce one in 3 days to get to the next hearing.
But it's still,
John, if it disappears on Wednesday, I can't produce a new one in 2 days.
no, I'm not saying if you put the sign up there.
I'm
if
saying I
you
might not
placed it.
possess enough signs. Again, once every 2 years has there been enough applications in 1 week that I can't get them all out on time. So if I lose signs from the prior week, I cannot reproduce them in time to get to the next week's applications.
That makes sense.
That's my little issue. It's a sliver concern. I don't need to I don't have to have it. I'm just trying to cover the little things that once in a while come up. If it's not there, it's not there. It's not going to materially change how we operate. Clearly, our intent is to still post signs
Great.
frequently.
Does anyone feel strongly about the quorum, the majority of the quorum, that item?
No.
Okay. So another thing.
I mean,
Yeah,
not
I-
like strongly against making the change. Is that what you mean?
I mean, it's
Either
basically-
way, yeah.
It's gonna make decisions flow faster.
Well, I mean, it would just, we've been there and not had quite enough people. Well, wasn't it like even last week where I came
Well,
in at the skin
well,
of my teeth?
We kind of held up starting.
Yeah, I know, because I didn't quite. get up
We've had
to it,
Kelly knows, we've had half the night taken up with.
votes, tie votes, and what happens.
Yes.
And
So I'm just saying for them to operate more efficiently, if they only have 3 people, to be able to say that the majority, that would allow
Majority of,
things.
as long as it's a quorum,
Yeah,
it shouldn't matter. I wouldn't think.
versus having to have the 3 votes, which means they'd always have to be unanimous for
Mhm.
that night's things, which could push
Right.
everything back to the next meeting, which will have other agenda items.
and we might have to. I mean, we can never guarantee 5 members of the board, so that's. I mean,
So let's
obviously,
make it easier.
I mean, the more common issue is you have a vacancy and then one person's gone and you're down to 3.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a 5-member board. If we have a vacancy and it's not filled, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, we have 7 on this board and we seem to be operating at 6 most of the time. So we were just trying to. I don't know that it again, it's not a mandatory. It's you could argue it either way. It's beneficial or not. And as long as I think we have a safeguard, some level of safeguard for the applicant. For the most time, really everything that comes to the board is at the applicant's timeline. It's
Right.
not driven by a city council action or
No, you
anything.
can take forever to do it.
So if the applicant's willing to wait, the only time that's not good is if it's enforcement action. So this is one of the times where it came up, then have a board to make a decision on an enforcement action. And so that seems a little unfair to the people who have put the time investment in to try to get an action taken for enforcement and it's been appealed. But for the most part, other than enforcement actions, it's all applicant driven for a timeline.
And then in the language, if they want to go ahead and push it, they can, that board.
Yeah, and I'm just saying
In that
that
scenario.
depending on how exactly that gets worded by the attorney, it might not say when 5 are present because if there's not 5 on the board, does that mean
Mhm.
there's no action?
Yeah.
And for 4 months, I don't think that's what it means. So.
Yeah.
So I'm mostly concerned about the enforcement actions that's been brought forward. I want to give them their chance to defend their position if they have an enforcement action. I'm not trying to take that away from them, but in the circumstance, there's not 5 people even on the board. I just want to be able to get resolution from the decision.
Don't
There
want to
have
kick the can down the road all the time.
Right.
Have there ever been, I mean, are there troubles with getting enough members for boards for long periods of time? Where that would help out that as well?
I mean, we always want a full board. I mean, we don't want to operate with 4 if we have when it's supposed to be 5. It's just that you could have 2 people sick and have 3. You could have, again, if there's a vacancy, that's when it gets to be a challenge.
Right. Yeah.
You're just down 1 before anything happens to anybody.
And like you said, I don't see any problem with, as long as there's a quorum, the majority in the quorum ruling is, I don't see a
I
problem
think
there.
that's how it works with council, right? If they have a quorum, it's still going to be. I mean, you can have like a
It
4-1
depends
vote.
on depends on the item, what the vote is, but
Okay.
um,
It just seems.
but
like
for the
that's-
most part, yeah, it's a majority of the quorum of the council. But
Yeah.
Yeah. So for us, the unique one is comp plan amendments. It must have for a recommendation on a comp plan amendment, it must have an affirmative vote of 4 members of the board.
Gotcha.
So regardless of quorum, if there's only 4 people here, it has to be 4-0 to
Okay.
be an official recommendation of the P&Z. Most of your items default back to majority of the quorum. It's just comp plan amendments that are in the code as, I guess, the comp plan, not the bylaws, but
And this wouldn't change that.
this won't affect you at all.
For different-
Nothing changes for P&Z.
No, yeah, I understand that. I'm under that scenario you just had.
Yeah, I didn't propose anything different for that.
I read through it, and the only thing I have angst about is the sign.
I don't have anything else.
Hmm?
I don't have any other issues
I
to
don't know
brought up.
anything else
You have
either.
anything else?
No,
Before we-
no, just the notice.
So I'm ready for us to make for someone to,
What's that?
Are you ready for us to get ready to vote?
If you are, yeah, since this doesn't really, I mean, there's no public anyway, but for this item, but
Yeah, it's not a public hearing either.
yeah,
So.
okay, so. In that case, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve it with the exception of removing the absence of that sentence of the absence of a sign. That whole sentence. Understand what I'm saying, Kelly?
Yep.
Okay.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Can there be separate motions?
No,
How does that work?
One at a time.
Oh, one at a time?
One at a
Okay.
time, yeah. Okay, seeing there's no second, then the motion does not move ahead. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to?
Yeah, so I'd move alternative one. The Planning and Zoning Commission can recommend that the city council adopt the amendments to the Ames Municipal Code related to approval authority and administration responsibilities of the Planning and Housing Department, update references to the comprehensive plan, modify procedures and application requirements for the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and update requirements and modify procedures for other application types.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
We have and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
nay.
Okay, the motion passes. Next on the agenda, commission comments. Does anybody have anything they'd like to comment about?
The only thing I was going to ask about is that I know that, and I probably because I missed last time, but the P&Z training, the May 31st, is that all?
It's still there. So we were going to register the three that had indicated they want to go. So I was going to hope under my comments, I was going to double check that was true. And I know, Mike, you called.
Yeah,
Later
you got my
this week.
message then, because chances are I'll be here.
Okay.
But
So you
yeah, before
already.
I hadn't realized when exactly that was going to be. But I'll be in Indianapolis Memorial Day weekend. And should it rain on Sunday, the race will fall to Monday, in which case I'd be driving back on Tuesday.
What's the 10-day forecast?
That's only, this will be my 43rd Indy 500, and it's only been delayed once that I can remember. And it was delayed for many days.
70 or 93.
So we'll be
87.
registering the three of you that asked
86.
for it this week, and we'll send you the confirmation then.
Okay.
For that.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
So right now I'm planning on being there.
Anything for next time, Kelly?
Probably not. Don't schedule a date, but right now it's looking like we probably won't have that meeting. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Any other staff comments or? And
Have
with that, I would offer a motion or ask for a motion to adjourn.
I motion that we adjourn.
Second.